Hey, this is Eric Stewart. I hope we can have fun with this video. I'm calling all free thinkers, agnostics, downtrodden, and outcasts. The ones, I guess, everybody that doesn't fit in anywhere. Anyway, think about it. I really wanted to think about this and start this video talking about John the Baptist or Yeshua or Jesus. In the sense that think about it, who actually came out to listen to these two men? And I think as we go through this, you'll be very surprised, because it wasn't the people that we would think, right? It wasn't the people that your regular churchgoers in their day. Of course, these were ish people and they went to synagogue. But it wasn't those people generally that came out to listen to these two, right? At all. And I want to go through that quickly here. I hope for those that are free thinkers, agnostics, and downtrodden outcasts from wherever can get some peace and comfort that they're on the right track. So I'm going to break them down into 4 groups here. And the first one is Peter, James, John, the apostles. Are we like them, or are we like Matthew, the tax collector apostle? Or are we like Mary Magdalene, or Mary and Martha, or Lazarus? Are we like those people, right? Because they weren't the downtrodden per se. They came from regular folk, right? But they chose to listen to these men, right? They chose to be free thinkers. They chose to be willing to listen and see what the person had to say. And then the second group, I'm going to say, are we the poor, the downtrodden, the lepers, the woman with the issue of blood, the Samaritan at the well, the tax collector, the importunate widow, the blind, the deaf, the possessed, okay, the outcast, the downtrodden, the people that didn't fit into the regular church or synagogue group, the people that had a very difficult life. And they, of course, were willing. He worked among those people, the Savior did, or Yeshua. He worked among those people, and that was his prime concern, was to work among them. And we see in the Old Testament that that's what it talks. If you look up poor, widow, fatherless, those type of things, you'll see how many times those things are mentioned in the Bible in the Old Testament. Then we can look at the third thing, which is, are we in the Nicodemus group, right? So the first group would be the regular fishermen, the regular people, the tax collector, the people that were doing working, had normal lives. They weren't the sick and afflicted in that sense. The second group we can call the people that really have been beaten down by life. The third group I'm going to call the Nicodemus group, or you could call it the rich young man group. But the Nicodemus group are the people. They came to listen to them, either one of the two men, but they were willing to listen. They were willing to think about the things that they said. There was another group that came to be fed, the 5,000. And a lot of them really were interested in what he had to say to some degree, to Yeshua and what he had to say. But when he started to teach them uncomfortable things that they really didn't, they clapped their hands over their ears and ran away, basically, right? Until he finally said to his other followers, his disciples, he said to them, "Are you guys going to leave too? I mean, you can all leave if you want to, right?" People weren't comfortable with the truth, right? They had cognitive dissonance. We're going to get into that, but they had trouble with the truth, so they ran away. They were fine with the food. No problem. The free food was great, but when it came to being taught things that they weren't comfortable with, they couldn't do that. The last group I want to talk about are the Pharisees, and I don't mean by just the Pharisees. They were the religious leader of their day. We'll just put all the religious leaders of any denominations in this group, the Pharisees, right? And they were the ones that were leading. They were supposed to be the pastors or the shepherds of the flock, or the people that were, the religious leaders of their day. And you could compare it to the religious leaders of our day too. So out of the 45,000 different Christian denominations today, okay, these are the people that are sure that each one of them feels they're sure that they have the truth against the other ones, right? And we can throw, I put down here, we could throw the atheists in that group too, because they're sure they have the truth as well. And like I said, there may be other groups, but for now, let's just deal with these 4. I think they'll really work with what I'm trying to get across here in this video. So the first group, actually the first 2 groups that we mentioned, they were willing to listen to and also to follow the teachings of John the Baptist or Yeshua. They were open, they were willing to entertain them, and then when they liked what they had to say, they were willing, and they believed that they should follow those things and do them. They were willing to do those things. One of them, because their circumstances had humbled them enough that they could listen, and that they realized that the system of religion that they were following wasn't fitting or meeting their needs, or they were of no worth to the people, or they were despised and rejected and pushed out because of being a leper or poor or whatever reason. They weren't able to fit into the puzzle of the traditional church of their day. Now the first group I think would likely not be rich or poor, right? Just regular folks who attended synagogue. They were still ish people. They still, kept the laws the best they could. They weren't rebels and that kind of thing, but they were open to listen to another person, right? Not because they were beaten down by the system, but because they were just interested in the truth. They were willing to think for themselves. That's why I started this video with the free thinkers. The people that are willing to think for themselves, whether they're in a religion or not in a religion, it doesn't really matter where we come from. It's just a matter of, are we willing to listen? Are we willing to think? Are we willing to really dig down into the truth and seek so that we can find? Now these folks, I could name, Peter, James, and John, those type of people, Mary and Martha, as I mentioned before. They were willing to turn their backs on the Pharisees, right, on their leaders of their religion, to try to understand what was being taught. They didn't just say, oh, no, we can't listen to that other person because he's not of our faith group, or that person's unsafe, or I can't listen, I've got to close my ears, I might be infected by their unbelief or their words that are against the Pharisees, I can't go there. So they were looking for truth. They were looking for the pearl of great price, the parable that the Yeshua gave. They were willing to give up all. If they felt it was the truth, they were willing to give up all to go out and find it. That's the being a free thinker, I think. They were open to understanding and to changing, right? They were willing to change. If they felt that what was being said was true, or for them, they were willing to do it, to give it a try. They were willing to give up their fishing or their tax collecting or whatever stood in the way of the truth, even their families and friends who could, hate them or their businesses or whatever. They could give up their football, whatever it was. They were willing to give it all up for that pearl of great price, for that truth. They weren't going to be, it's like if you're looking into, why was the jab dangerous, and then a lot of people, if you start opening that up as a conversation piece at your Thanksgiving meal, it's going to cause division, right? Because people don't want to talk about it, or they have very different opinions about almost anything in this world. But these people are willing to go out and be seen with this person and listen to them, no matter what their business partners or their, family or anyone thinks of them. They're willing to go because they love and appreciate the truth. And the last sentence of the Sermon on the Mount teaches that Yeshua was teaching, that ends with that expression. He taught them as one having authority. They were startled. The people, when they listened to him, he didn't speak like the Pharisees. He didn't speak like the regular, wishy-washy, religious kind of thing. He was like direct to the point. This is it. And they could feel that the things that he was saying were of deep importance, and they couldn't believe that this nobody was speaking to it with such authority. So I hope that all those that are here, willing to listen to my video, and other podcasters. There's wonderful, great podcast videos on YouTube and TikTok, different places. There's all kinds of people putting out great content, and that's great. But I hope we'll be in group 1 or group 2. That's what I'm hoping to discuss in this video. Why it's so important to be in at least group 2, even if we have to go through suffering, that we can start to open our hearts to want to learn. But group 1, I think, is the best, where we just want to learn because we want to learn, not because of financial or health or any other difficulty. We just have a great desire to learn. But what of group 3, the Nicodemus group, as I called it, right? And this is a fairly large group. Okay, Nicodemus in the Bible was a prominent man, a Pharisee, and a great teacher, well known. But he was different than most of the other Pharisees who were just completely against Yeshua, completely trying to destroy him all the time. Nicodemus wasn't, he was he was a very good guy, right? And he wanted to know, and he wanted to meet Yeshua, but he would only basically met him at night, in an upper room at night. And I don't know how they got there, whether they came cloaked for the darkness, but it was at night in the darkness. He didn't want to go and sit down and meet with him in the, let's say in the lodge, or in the dining room or in the main square. No, it was at night, and why? Because he didn't want to be seen, I assume, with Yeshua, because it would affect his standing with the people in his profession, right? So I think that, at least I that's how I see it anyway. So this Nicodemus was, by all accounts and from what we read, he was an honorable man. He was a very good man, very much like the rich young man that came to Yeshua and said, "I'm keeping all the commandments, and what more can I do?" And Yeshua said, "Go sell all you have and give it to the poor and come follow me." Well, he couldn't do that. It was kind of the same thing. What would my family say? What would my business partners say? He wasn't willing to go there. He was willing to do some things, but he wasn't willing to go there. So the truth wasn't like in the parable of the pearl of great price, where the person who had money was willing to give it all up. He gave it all up to go and buy this piece of land, to have that pearl of great price, that truth that he was looking for. It didn't matter about the money, didn't matter about all those things. So he was different than the rich young man in that. So Nicodemus, even though, from what we gather, he loved the words, he was amazed at, the miracles and the things that Yeshua had done, right? But he didn't want at the same time to leave his position or his status behind, no matter what either. He kind of liked both, and that's fine. But that's where he was. And there was a reason he met with him on this roof at night, as I mentioned, because this group, they love the truth, but the cares of the world choke the burgeoning desire to learn truth, right? It comes down to that parable, the parable of the sower of the seed, where the seed fell in 4 places, right? Fell on the path and was taken by the birds, fell on the side and grew up and burnt. It didn't have any roots and it died. Or it fell among thorns, or it fell in good land and gave 30, 60, 100-fold harvest from the wheat seed. And so we're talking, I'm going to apply that a little bit more in this, but for those, most of you probably know that parable. But this group, the third group, they care about the cares of the world. So they fall among thorns, in the sense that doesn't mean all the people were thorns around them, but the cares of the world and what other people think and all that kind of stuff stop them from really getting to the truth, stop them from really seeking and finding, because they're so worried about what others think that they never find. And group 4 cannot accept the truth at all. And this is a big group, the largest of the groups, I believe. Okay, they cannot accept the truth at all, and they can't even be willing to look for the truth. Okay, so they are like the seed that fell on the path, and the birds came down and ate it. So some of them are like that, right? Like the Pharisees. The Savior, or Yeshua, he did miracles right in front of them, right? But he could have flown up in the air, 100 feet and come back down, and they might have gone, "Oh, that's a nice magic trick," but they wouldn't have changed their hearts. They wouldn't have had any desire to change or think or find the truth. Wouldn't matter. So it didn't matter. The miracles don't change hearts anyway, and the miracles are wonderful, and it does show who he was, but they don't change people. People change because they want to learn for themselves. So this group here, like I said, is the biggest, the largest of all the groups, because it also encompasses the people that can't even it's like the seed that falls and the birds come and pick it up. It never even sprouts into anything. It just never happens, right? Maybe that's like the Pharisee leaders, or some of the leaders maybe in our day. But the next group, that's also, I think, in this group 4, are the seeds that fall on the side of the path. And they do get they start to sprout, they come up a little bit, and then they get burnt by the sun. Like they might get a few thoughts of, it's like when they get the the jab, for instance, is just give an example. They get the jab, or someone in the family gets a jab, they get sick and die or whatever, and they go, wow, okay, or the doctor tells them, we have friends that the doctor told them that, their problem came from the jab, and they go, oh yeah, okay, that's fine, but they can't go to, but this leader told me to get that jab, and why did he, no, they can't go there. So as soon as the few thoughts even start to come to their mind, a question like, oh, maybe I should look into this, no, it just, boom, shut the door, close it down, because it can't go there. It's an uncomfortable thought. So this cognitive dissonance is when we believe one thing and we find the truth, like this person, when the doctor told them that her heart issue was caused by the jab, she couldn't, that's the truth, but she had to throw away any thoughts about why, who told her to have this and da-da-da, throw it away, because it leads, she knows, I think, underneath that if she followed that path, it would lead to very uncomfortable places. So it's better just to throw away that truth, not even think about it, just, let's go on with life kind of thing. Let's be positive. It's like the seed that falls on the edge of the path, like I just mentioned. And that seed cannot get root. Not because the seed isn't any good, right? Not because there isn't sun. It's because there's no soil, there's no desire to really look into these truths and have a desire to learn. So that this root of, this tree of looking for knowledge just can't get any root. And I put here that I want to add that almost all who lead or follow any organized religion, and I mean any, all and everyone, it's all of them, any of the 45,000 denominations, Christian denominations, can be found in this group, I believe, in this last group, the group of the four. Doesn't mean that all the congregants, are in this group, and it doesn't even mean that all the leaders, because of course I don't know that, right? But I think the vast majority of the people that lead the different thousands and thousands of different religions, Christian religions in the world, and maybe the other ones, I don't know them as well. But I think they can be found in this group. And like I said, I don't mean those that are attending church, because people could be attending, I could go attend church, or anyone could go attend church if they feel like it. It isn't so much, it's about, we're talking here about our desire to study, to learn, to be open, to have the desire to seek and find and know. It's like Peter, James, and John, even though they were fishermen, I'm sure they were still attending synagogue. I'm sure they still, were in the proper-ish religion of their day, and or Lazarus or any of them, right? So they still attended church. Even Yeshua attended church. He went into of his day, which would have been the synagogue, right? But he still went. It doesn't say that he went every week. I have no idea. But we do read that he went there, right? Because he spoke there, and had trouble with the people there at the same time. So what I'm really talking about are people that are super faithful to their faith group. And of the 45,000, they believe they're in the one, and they hold to that no matter what, and they put their trust in that church or that leader or whatever, and they believe in their heart that they are in the one and only true and correct path, and all the rest of them, the other 45,000 minus one, are all wrong. So if you ask a Seventh-day Adventist or a Jehovah's Witness or a Mormon or a Catholic or a born-again evangelical, a Baptist, a Bethelite, or any denomination out there, pretty much you'll find that they believe that they are in the one true church, that they are in the best place. They have the best ministers, the best doctrine, the best this, the best that. They have it all. The others are off, but they have the truth. And I know it's hard to believe for me, but when you think about it, it just blows my mind. I've said that before in other videos, but it's like 45,000. I didn't realize it was that high, that many different denominations in the world, right? And then of course when you start thinking about it, you see that's probably fairly accurate. But how can there be 45,000 different truths about who the Savior was, about and all the teachings and what they believe? Because they're all different. In one way or another, they're all different, yet they all say they have the truth. And just think about that. If you're a truth seeker, you just go shake your head, because that can't be right. So there's people in this group, the group 4, they just can't possibly be wrong, And I don't mean so much because of pride for some maybe, but I think most it's just that's their safety net. They can't go there. They cannot think about disagreeing with anything about what they're in, because that would shock their foundation. And the Savior talks about the rock foundation and the sandy foundation, and that those that are built on a sandy foundation, they don't want to even think about anything. He says this, right? I mean, this is 2,000 years ago. He says that they're scared to even think or talk or feel, because what if they know that if they did one thing, their whole foundation could fall apart, and they don't want to go there. So there's nothing wrong with any faith group. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. But as long as the faith group you're in, or if you decide to leave one, that's fine too. Or be in none, or just in your own home doing what you think is right. Or, maybe you're not even maybe you're agnostic. It doesn't matter, right? Free thinking is free thinking. And all that I'm saying in this video is, what group are we in? And if we aren't in the right group, what are we going to do to get in the right, if we can, to get in the right group so we can think? We should still be able to be free-thinking people, no matter if we're a Seventh-day Adventist, a Mormon, a Jehovah's Witness, or a Catholic. It doesn't matter what religion one's in. We can be Buddhist, we can be, we can be a New Age person, we can be a Hindu. It doesn't matter. We can all look for truth. It doesn't matter what faith group, what organization we're in. But if those organizations stop us from, or our desire to be in those organizations stopped us from thinking, then I think that could be a problem. But anyway, so imagine that first group. I remember Peter, James, John, and all those people, Lazarus. Okay, what made them different? They were still in the synagogue with the same-ish people, the ones that rejected Yeshua and wouldn't listen to him. They were in the same, going to the same, among the same people, okay? But a lot of the people that were going with Peter, James, and John and all these people to the synagogue, a lot of them were 100% sure that they were God's chosen people. They were 100% sure that they were saved while everyone around them was perishing, that they were the God's chosen people. So we see in this interesting scripture, this is John, this is in Matthew and Matthew 3, and this is John the Baptist. But when John saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees, two different religious leader and group among the Ish people, coming to his place of baptism, he said to them, "You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath? Produce fruit then in keeping with repentance, and do not presume to say to yourselves, 'We have Abraham as our father,' for I tell you that out of these stones God can raise up the children for Abraham. The axe lies ready at the root of the trees, and every tree that does not produce good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire." And so, I just share that because it's, and Yeshua also says the same thing later to the Pharisees, that, don't brag on the fact that you are from the seed of Abraham and from the Ish people. Don't brag on that, because if you're not willing to produce the fruit, then, if God wants seed of Abraham, he can make them out of those stones, And so I think it's the same thing goes for the churches of our day, right? The ones that think that they're right and everyone else is wrong, and I'm right and everyone's wrong. That isn't how it works. It's all about, who we are and what we become, and whether we can find truth and live it, and seek to find more and more and more until we gain as much as we possibly can, right? Not sit back and go, I'm saved and you guys aren't. I'm sorry, so you guys go burn in HELL, and I'm going to be safe here because I've been born again, or I've got this, I've been to this temple, or I've been to there, or whatever. And those falsehoods just limit us, right? And as he's saying here, he can make the stones into the seed of Abraham if he needs to, right? So like I said, these people were sure that they had the truth, right? They were so, I'm going to say cocky, but they were so sure, so proud that they were of the right seed, and all the Gentiles and everyone around them and all the Samaritans were going to be destroyed, and they were righteous because of where they were born and who they were born to, right? But again, the leaders may have known or not known. Like in our day, the leaders, some know that they belong to secret societies, and others are not, but that doesn't really matter. But their followers were mesmerized. They are certain that they have this righteousness attributed to what group or what church or what faith they're in, that gives them a place, apple of God's eye, because of being in a certain church or being Abraham's seed or whatever it is, right? So I mentioned that in that day, of course, they looked down especially on the Samaritans, right, or the heathen around them, right? But for our day, we can easily look down on people that are non-Christian, or this Christian group looks down on that Christian group, and I think I've said enough about that. But compare that to today. We have 2 billion Christians, okay, on earth, right? 2 billion Christians, right? And the Savior said, few will find the way. Few, right? 2 billion isn't few, right? Few will find the way. And he said the path is broad that goes to destruction, if you want to call it that. And so 2 billion Christians, it's like, there's something wrong there, right? I mean, I wish there were 2 billion faithful Christians open to any truth, thinking, seeking to do everything that was right and finding the truth and living that way, then that would be wonderful. But I want to make the point that this group, the Christians, especially the ones that are certain that they have the truth, their path is the right, true way, they are the most dangerous group of all. It's the same mentality of the people in the time of Yeshua and before him, the same type of attitude that killed and stoned the prophets. They're also the same attitude and same way of thinking that ended up killing John the Baptist in a sense, but especially killing the son, Yeshua. And whether you think he's just a prophet or he was just a man, it doesn't matter. But why was he killed? Not because of anything that he did. It was because they didn't want to listen to him anymore. So if you can't put your hands over your ears anymore and that's not working, then best to just get rid of them, right? And Yeshua chastises the people, of course, before he dies, but he chastises them and says, you are the ones, it's your fathers that killed the prophets, because they're going around telling him how much they love the prophets and how they're sons of Abraham, and they love David and Solomon, they love all the prophets, Samuel and Jeremiah and Isaiah, all the dead prophets, they love them, right? Same as we love the prophets that are in the Bible, and we love, Peter, James, and John, and all the things that we read in the New Testament. But do we love the ones, if there was a true prophet came amongst us right now, would we love them, or we put them to death, but we love the dead prophets? Because the dead prophets, we can interpret their words any way we want. But these folks in this group 4 that can't think for themselves and can't change their mind, they can never find the truth. And why can't they find the truth? Because they're already 100% sure that they have all the truth. So they're, almost like the atheists, sorry atheists, but that's how I see the atheists. But when you're 100% sure that you have all the truth, or like an atheist 100% sure there's no God, then it's almost impossible to find, because it's almost impossible to seek. Like if you're already 100% certain that you know 100%, then how can you find? For me, for example, I go out and I love listening to different podcasts, and I don't find anyone that has all of the truth. I just don't, and I don't have it all either. I just don't. But I find some that are just incredible, and I learn incredible things. And then they go off basing my opinion on one thing or another, and I go, that's fine. I mean, we're all learning, right? It's all, and I'm grateful, as I said, I'm grateful for all those that do put themselves out there and put together these type of podcasts. But these people in this group 4, they are stuck in darkness, and they think that they're in the light. And Yeshua talks about this in the Gospels. They think they're in the light, but they're actually in the darkness. And I mentioned here, pray that your nation is never run and controlled by religious people who feel they have all the truth. And I'm afraid, I think we're going into that day again. And I personally, I'd much rather have my people running my whatever it is, being a little on the iniquitous side than being so sure that they have all the truth, that if you don't have the truth, you better be, put down, because you're, and that is a difficult thing. A few years ago, I think around 2020, I guess, and during the jab stuff, when that came up and all the convid stuff happened, that's when I learned about this cognitive dissonance. I'd never really studied those words, right? Big words. But in a nutshell, it comes down to whether a person can accept truth or not, and to what degree. And it's the same as the parable of the sower, at least I see it that way, and where the seed fell. This fellow, Matthias Desmet, has a great theory about this, and it's well worth you going and listening to him. Fantastic, very easy to listen to. A European, a doctor, and whatever, I'm not sure what, but great. I'll see here if I can bring you to that. Yeah, so here we have Matthias Desmet, okay, is a Belgian clinical psychologist and professor in clinical psychology at Ghent University as a doctor in philosophy, psychological sciences, and a master's in statistics. But his stuff is super worth listening to him. Get a podcast or something and listen to him. But he talks about this mass formation theory, and I'm not going to read through this because it's too much here. But I'll go back here and I'll just discuss that a minute here. He basically breaks up the population. He was talking about the jab and how people reacted to it, right? But he said basically that 50% of the people, more or less, of course it's not exact, but he says 50% more or less of people, they will go with the group no matter what, even if it means death, it doesn't matter. They will go with the group. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, and they will shame anyone who even dares to think differently than they do, right? That's the one group. Then there's another group, he calls it about 30% of the people, that you can talk to, if you disagree with what's going on, you can talk to them and they can think a little bit. They're not out there, thinking about it that much, but they're willing to at least talk to you about it without putting your position down. Then he said there's another 10 to 20% of people that he basically calls them like the rebels, the people that won't go along with being pushed into something they don't feel. They want to think it through themselves and make their own decision. And they won't go along with the group just to be part of the group. Anyway, he says that these three groups, if you think about them, and then I'm applying them here in this talk as much as I can, but cognitive dissonance comes to all of us. So this cognitive dissonance is very hard. It's like with the jab. Some people had to have it, take it, and they take 10. If they're asked to take 100, they probably take 100. And if you dare to even say a word about it or not wear your mask, you would not be able to, they couldn't have you around. You would have to be out, go away, right? And then there's the other group. They're okay with the people that do it either way. And then there's the rebel types that, but cognitive dissonance comes to everyone. This issue is, how do we handle it? So when the people in the Savior's day, when they were listening to him, the Pharisees and the people that followed the Pharisees, they were not able to deal with cognitive dissonance. They couldn't deal with it. They just stuck. No matter what, they were sticking with the group no matter what, nor could they even entertain. So that meant that he had to be silenced or put away or pushed aside or whatever, or they had to walk away. And then there's that other group in the middle, as I said, and then there's the people that are, but the people I think that were willing to truly think and look at his words no matter what happened, they were able to accept this cognitive dissonance. Yes, they've been brought up all their lives to believe that, the Messiah that was going to come for the Ish people was going to save them from the Romans and all that, but they were willing to listen to this person that wasn't talking that way and still accept and then see that who he really was. Even though that they at first thought he should be this, they're willing to say, you're right, but I can see these things, I can see the miracles, I can understand his words, I can see these things. No other man could do that. But for others, they couldn't go there. So it's a matter of how much can we accept the truth and to what degree. And it really determines on whether we're going to find the truth or not. And that's all we can handle or whatever, but we get stuck on that one truth, and that's as far as we're willing to go. And that I find that so sad, because there's thousands of things I've found that I've had to become, as I said, as the Yeshua said, you have to become like a little child. I've had to watch multiple people's videos about all kinds of things, right? And learn, and then realize I was taught lies all my life about almost everything, and have to go back and look. And I'm so grateful for the people that I've watched and what I've learned from them. So again, just quickly, go watch that. I think you'll get a great deal out of that Matthias Desmet. The 50%, this huge group, no matter what, they're not going to change. So he said, forget it. Don't even try to talk them to them you're wasting your breath. It won't happen. The other 30% of people, he said, if you're in that 10 to 20 that can really see the truth, you can talk to the group that's the 30%. You might be able to help them to understand, but the people that are in that big group, forget about it. He said, they can't go there. So which of these three groups do you think the Pharisees and religious leaders of today, fall into? The true blue believers, the people that are faithful, whatever of those 45,000 churches, the people that are the true blue, stable backbone of each of those faith traditions, what group do you think that they fall into, right? Are they the people that are willing, like John, Peter, and to go and listen to someone different than what they are? Or are they like the Nicodemus that will listen but only at night? Or are they really in that group that just keep me where I am, I'm happy where I am, I don't even want to hear it, that's where I am, right? But which of these groups do you think went and listened to John the Baptist and then followed him? Or went and listened to Yeshua and followed him? So I'm going to show you this in the Matthew 21:32, just I grabbed it off this site here. For John came to you to show you the way of righteousness. So John the Baptist came to you to show you the way of righteousness. And you did not believe him, but the tax collectors and the prostitutes did. And even after you saw this, you did not repent and believe him. So this is Yeshua or Jesus talking to those that wouldn't listen to that group 4, right? He's saying he came and showed you righteousness or how to find truth, but you didn't believe him, right? But who did? He tells them that the tax collectors and the prostitutes did. So the people that were in group 2, the ones that have been beaten down by life, they were willing to listen to John and believe him and change their lives. But the people that were in group 3 and group 4, especially group 4, they were not, as he said, you did not repent and believe him. They wouldn't go there. Anyway, the funny thing is that it's all reversed in our day, completely reversed. The ones who follow the organized religions of our day are pretty much all in that 50% or 30% group that we discussed. And the ones that will not attend or have withdrawn their membership or withdrawn from the religions in general, doesn't mean they've stopped believing in God. Some do, but they are from that 10 or 20% group that know that they get cognitive dissonance. My church teaches this is true. They can't be both true, so they go, I've got to start pulling away from this because I can't listen to lies and think it's truth anymore. Whereas the group that's in the 50 or 30%, they'd rather, even if they found out something was a lie, it really wouldn't matter. They'd just rather stick with what they have. So some agnostics, some free-thinking people, some people that have been beaten down in life or whatever, they're willing to start to think. And once they start to think, they're willing to go down any hole, to look over under any rock, to go down any rabbit hole. They're willing to do whatever to find that pearl of great price, to find that truth, whatever the truth is. And it doesn't matter what topic. There's so many, as I said, there's hundreds, if not thousands of topics you can look at. And I don't mean just religious topics, I mean topics, all kinds of topics. And you can go and find your answer. But if we're sure that we already know, then it's pretty much impossible to go find, because we'll never even go look. And so it's just interesting that maybe funny isn't the right word, but I find it so interesting that the group that were drawn to Yeshua and John were from group 1, and some from group 2 that were healed or were outcasts, right? But the people that were the free thinkers were the ones that went to listen to these two, that would follow the prophets and listen to them. Because they could see the miracles, they could hear the truth, be pricked in their hearts, and they knew they were on the right track because whether you want to call it your own spirit or your discernment or the Holy Ghost, whatever you want to call it, they knew that they were following what they heard or what they learned was truth, and they were comfortable with that. So this small group of followers were the ones who made up the entirety of the early church, especially in the beginning of the 1st century in Jerusalem, right? They were following the 12 apostles. They were the ones, they were called the Ebionites, or the Nazarene, Church of the Nazarenes, or the Church of the Way. They weren't called Christians in those days. They called it the Way, right? They still went to synagogue. They still celebrated the Sabbath of the Ish people. They still followed the laws of Moses, basically. They still did all those things, and yet they still believed in Yeshua and his teachings, and they did both of those. But with the loss of the 12 apostles, as they died or were put to death, most of them were killed, we see the rise in going into the 2nd century, especially, and in the 3rd, we see the rise of what I'll call the Churchmen, the vying for power and position, and a very different group of people. So in the very beginning, the people, the 12 apostles, and the first followers, the Ebionites, or the poor ones, the ones that were trying to follow the way, were all from this free thinking, wanted to know all the truth no matter what, even if it meant them being tossed out or tossed to the lions or whatever. It didn't matter. They were willing to do whatever it was to follow the truth, the pearl of great price. But within 100 years, even less really, but within a very short time, those people were pretty much cast aside, and the true growth of the church was among the 50% and the 30%. The ones that wanted the structure, they wanted to live some of the things that Yeshua said, but they started to follow all the things that Paul said. They changed out his words. You can get into, if you want to go search it out, look into Marcionism and look at the early church fathers until you get up to Constantine, and you can see this huge change to why we have so many churches and 2 billion Christians, right? Because they were, instead of being this lowly, free-thinking group that was persecuted and nobody wanted to be part of them because they were oddballs, basically, to where you had to be a member, you had to be a Christian if you wanted to have any place in society. By the time Constantine came, everyone became basically Christian over time within a few hundred years of him. But it's this vying for power and position. It's completely the opposite. But that's why they became just like the Pharisees, the same kind of thing. They wanted to have their, the power, position, money, wealth, deviancy, or whatever else they were into. That was all good as long as they were part of the club, part of the group, part of the ruling power. And so the church changed from one thing into another. And this free thinking group, the Ebionites or the Church of the Nazarene or the Way, they were wiped out, literally. And the Universal Church, as it's called, the Catholic Church, the Universal Church, was founded, and by force, basically, in the end. I mean, at first it wasn't, but very quickly it did become that. So again, what happened to the free-thinking early followers of the Way? I put down, lions, anyone, or you want to be a Roman torch or whatever, because the 50% group could not have these free-thinking Nazarenes and Ebionites around, even though they were the founding converts, if you want to call it, or the founding people that followed the 12 apostles. They were the ones that were the true witnesses to the real way that they were supposed to be. Okay, it was off with their heads or that kind of thing, right? Because they couldn't just think of if you want to apply it, think of the jab, right? And how people were treated. The people that wouldn't go along and wear the mask or wouldn't get the jab and wouldn't do this and wouldn't comply with this and that. I mean, there wasn't really off with their heads per se in the reality, but in terms of being cut off from society and cut off from family and cut off from, yes, it was pretty much the same thing. So if you can apply that back to this first 100 years of 200, 300 years of the church, the same thing happened. As the church grew, it attracted the people that wanted power, position, wealth, and those kind of things. And they rose to the leadership. And in the end, they got rid of the people that were the free-thinking guys. They were gone. And they had the Council of Nicaea and Constantine, and off we go. And that's how we have the Christian religion, which has probably killed more people in the world than any other faith group by far. The warring religion, the warring Christian groups have done more damage to the world than any other group, right? So if all the organized religions and the secret societies that support them and are part of that are from this 50% group, and a few of them from the 30% group, because they're not from the free thinking group generally, right? They're just not. Then what will happen to the free thinkers as we move on towards a one world, gov and a one world church, which is coming, right? And you can see them already I don't know how much you follow those things, but you can already see people all over the world, different people that are in leadership, are asking for the social media groups to be monitoring misinformation all the time. And to them, misinformation is basically, you don't believe what we believe, so we want you to be quiet. We don't want your opinion out there, so suppress it, that kind of thing. And that's just the start, in my opinion. We're going into some very sad days, I'm afraid, and even the ability to make videos like this, I think it'll be gone, soon enough. But if a prophet came, a literal prophet from God, okay, I'm not a prophet, I'm just a person putting out my thoughts out there. But if a prophet came, sent from God, like Isaiah or Jeremiah, that kind of thing, or John the Baptist, if they came on the scene right now, how do you think the churches and the people that follow them would react? What do you think they'd do? Do you think all those 45,000 churches would all unite under this one prophet and give away all their tithings and their money and their donation and their plates and their jobs, and the leaders would just give it all up and say, yeah, we need to go follow this prophet, right? Well, if you look at the Bible, you can just see that never happened. The prophets were almost never accepted. And I put down here, do you think that these leaders of the churches and non-churches, just government, whatever leaders in the world, do you think they'd allow this prophet, if there was a prophet that came, do you think they'd allow him onto TV or give him the option to have millions and millions of followers on YouTube or on TikTok? No, not a chance. They'd never get. They'd be thrown out, okay? That's my opinion. They'd be thrown out immediately, denigrated, slandered, shamed, hidden. And if that didn't work, they would be, permanently removed. So I think if the Messiah came now, just ask yourself, would the religious leaders bow out and give their flocks over for him to teach them? If that meant no more donations, no more tithing, and so on and so forth, would they be willing to do that? Or would they be more like the Pharisees, part of the club, following, secret things, and do you think they'd give them over? I personally, I don't see it at all. I mean, I'm sure there's the odd one that would, but I think almost none would. And we really are so blind. And what I want to talk about, Jeremiah and Isaiah, two great prophets from the Old Testament. And so let's go here. So Jeremiah 23, let's go here. And the whole chapter is good. I'm just going to read a couple verses here. And it's a lot about the coming of the lost tribes in the last day. But this part here is about the prophets. And he says, I have seen also in the prophets of Jerusalem an horrible thing. They commit adultery, they walk in lies, they strengthen the hands of evildoers, that none doth return from his wickedness. They are all of them unto me as Sodom, and the inhabitants thereof as Gomorrah. Therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts concerning the prophets, Behold, I will feed them with wormwood. So think of Revelation, the book of Revelations, and make them drink the water of gall. For from the prophets of Jerusalem is profaneness gone forth into all the land. And thus saith the Lord of hosts, Hearken not unto the words of the prophets that prophesy unto you. They make you vain. They speak a vision of their own hearts, and not out of the mouth of the Lord. And they say still unto them that despise me, The Lord hath said, Ye shall have peace. And they say unto every one that walketh after the imagination of his own heart, No evil shall come upon you. And so I'll leave it there, but it's a great chapter to read if you have the interest. And I'm going to go over here into Isaiah, and this is chapter 56. And again, he's speaking of the prophets. Think of prophets, I don't mean just people that call themselves prophets. The leaders, people on the watchtower, the leaders of all the churches, the people that are leading the flocks. And in verse 10 it says, His watchmen are blind, they are all ignorant. They are all dumb dogs. They cannot bark, sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber. Yea, they are greedy dogs which can never have enough, and they are shepherds that cannot understand. They all look to their own way, every one for his gain from his quarter. Come ye, say they, I will fetch wine, and we will fill ourselves with strong drink, or doctrine. And tomorrow shall be as today, and much more abundant. It's the same thing as it was said in Jeremiah. It's all, don't worry, Your sons, your grandsons, and your great-grandsons are all going to live on just fine. Everything is just going to continue as it always has been. Eat, drink, and be merry, basically. And so this is what these two prophets, this is almost 3,000 years ago, were saying about people in their day, and also prophesying about our day, because Isaiah and Jeremiah are basically talking as much about our day as their day. So of course they're talking about the leaders. That's what those two prophets were talking about. But I also wanted to talk about the followers. What about us, the regular people, just the regular people that are not, getting their employment by preaching and that kind of thing? So what did they choose in the Yeshua or Jesus day? So they loved the miracles, as I said. They loved the excitement as he came into Jerusalem on the foal of an ass. They filled the streets, But within a couple of days, when the Pharisees condemned him and the leaders condemned him, the common folk, they turned as a group pretty much against him, until when he was crucified, there was a handful of people were all that were there. So it was just like when he fed the 5,000, when everything was great and they're having the food, it was okay. But as soon as things got a little bit dicey, it was like run and hide. So I wanted to ask to the people that are free, to people that are watching the video, what would you have done? What would we have done if we were there? So speaking to free thinkers, will we pick up the Bible and read it? I know it's tainted. I know people struggle with the Bible because of what's been done with Christianity, but I think if we just pick up the Bible, read especially some of the prophets of the Old Testament, but read just the Gospels, and you'll see that. Read the Sermon on the Mount, and you'll see that almost no churches even teach that. Yet it's the key teaching in the Bible, at least from Yeshua, and yet it's ignored pretty much, right? Because it requires things, and it goes against Paul's belief in grace, which you don't have to do anything. You don't have to find anything. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is believe. And even though I know some people think that that's not what Paul only taught, but anyway, I don't want to do that in this video. But if we're free-thinking people, right, if we can think for ourselves, we can read the Bible, we can understand it. I know that for me, when I first, came into even religion-type thinking, I came from completely agnostic family. I'd never read the Bible in my life, But for me, don't get offended, the Christians out that are listening to this. But I read the Book of Mormon first. I read it in a few days, actually. And then I read the Bible, and I found them both to be very, very useful books, and still do. I've read the Apocrypha. I've read all kinds of things. I love to read anything and everything. There's nothing that I won't read, and I'll read the Quran. It doesn't matter. I haven't read it yet. I've seen parts of it and watched things on it, but I haven't read it, and I should. But nothing will hurt us to read. We can read anything. There's good in so much and so many things. But it's our preconceptions that keep us from being willing to look at things and see if there's some value in those things. And like I said, most of the things that are key things that Yeshua taught in the 4 Gospels, if you read them for yourself, you will see that almost none of the churches teach almost anything from there, except for a few nice little stories. Same as the Old Testament, they don't really teach about Jeremiah 23 and those kind of things. Of course they don't, because it's talking about them, but they don't talk about that. They talk about Noah and building his ark, and talk about Abraham and some of his trials. They'll talk about Joseph being sold into Egypt to make a story about that, and they take a thing on King David or Goliath or something like that. But the actual teachings, not really, not too much. Do they teach the 10 Commandments? Most churches don't anymore, really. And the Catholics changed them. They took one out, and they don't teach the full 10 anyway. But I want to ask, will we pick up the Apocrypha, the Book of Enoch or Jasher, or all the different books? There's so many apocryphal books that are really worth reading. Baruch and Esdras, and there's so many different books that have been cut out of what we consider the Bible. And it's like the Bible is sacrosanct, and it's not. It was put together in 300 by Constantine, under the care of a pagan, and of course there's great things in the Bible. There's wonderful things, but many books were left out that shouldn't have been, that were just as valuable as some of the books that are in there, maybe more so. And I'm also going to say here too, what of the Book of Mormon? It does not belong to any one church any more than the Bible does. I don't not read the Bible because the Catholics were the first people to have the Bible, right? I don't go, well, that comes from the Catholics, so I don't want to, read it, It doesn't matter if it can't pass through that church, then through the Protestant churches. It doesn't matter, and there's different versions and translations of the Bible. That's great. I even look at the Ethiopian there's all kinds of things, and some people are putting out new Hebrew translations direct from Hebrew, and I love that, right? Because you can learn things that have been left out by translators. But the Bible itself doesn't belong to any one group. It doesn't. It's for anyone. You can pick it up in any hotel. But also the Book of Mormon, it does not belong to any one group. I know that everybody thinks there's just the LDS one church, but there's not. There's like 10 churches or more that use smaller ones, but they use the Book of Mormon as well. There's lots of people like me that I'm not associated with anything, but I still use the Book of Mormon. It's very valuable to me, especially going into the last days. And it's worth reading for anyone. But most people won't read it, I know that the black people, the Hebrew Israelites, some of them are starting to read it, but it's very hard for them because the racist stuff that was done within the Mormon church against the blacks. But of course, that's a whole other, I'm definitely going to be doing a video on that one. But anyway, but I just want to make that point. With the Book of Mormon, just because the churches that had the book fell away, they've all fallen away from the truth completely. And just because they've fallen away, just like the Catholics did, doesn't mean they don't have some truth. They still do. All the churches have some truth. But the Book of Mormon doesn't belong to them. They have it, yes. But that isn't a reason, in my opinion, for you not to read the book. Please do. It was the first book I read. Wonderful. Love it. Still, I bet I've gone through it 100+ times in my life. And, I love to read it. It's wonderful. It's very, very good. And just as if you were reading the Bible, I would say, please don't go out and become a Catholic, or don't go out and become a Pentecostal or a JW because you've read the Bible. I'm going to say the same thing about the Book of Mormon. Please do not go out and join any church associated with it. Just don't. Just use it for your personal study. That's what it's for. That's what the books, all of them, are for. Just as I said, with the very foundation of the people that brought out the Bible, because they have, in the Peter, James, and John, and the Yeshua's day, there were scrolls and stuff, and there were some writings, but there was no Bible in those days like we have it, and there was no 4 Gospels and that kind of thing. People were lucky to have one Gospel in their hand, but the people that followed Yeshua and the things that he laid down, not the things that Paul laid down, but the things that Yeshua laid down. That group was called the Ebionites, but as I said, they did not last at all. And it's the same thing that happened. If you look at the founder of Mormonism, he was wiped out. People rebelled against him. He was very, very young, and he didn't even make it 5 years before people were completely rebelling against him. And he fought for about 10 more years to try to bring out some things, and he and his brother were killed. His other 2 brothers were killed. His whole family was just pretty much lost, and things were taken over. Please look at the book as you do look at any apocryphal book, and just test it on its own merits without preconceived notions. I'm sorry for the notions that are out there. And just as I said with the Catholics, the LDS have had this takeover, and the 20% group of the church, there's people leaving all the time because and there's good people in that church. There's good people in JWs. There's good people in the Seventh-day Adventists. I love the Seventh-day Adventists for a lot of things. But all the churches have good people. And even people that aren't in the churches, even the atheists have good people. It's not that. Are they willing, when they see things are wrong, are they willing to say with their feet, I can't support this, I've got to go. Because my cognitive dissonance, I can't know that this is true and that I believe this and it's not true, but this is actually true. And they're lying to me. I can't keep following these things, so they have to leave. And it's a shame that so many people leave and give up on God too, but that's kind of the way it is, each person's got to find their own way. For me, I see in a lot of the churches that the jab thing showed a lot of people that their church leaders were willing to literally sacrifice their flock, even to death, to protect the funds and the threats from the Gov. And that's exactly what Jeremiah said, that they're not watchmen. They aren't. They are there. It's for themselves. So whether you're coming from any church, no church background, agnostic, atheist, doesn't matter. There's still time to come out of her, my people, to start to seek the truth, and not just in religious things, but history, politics, the elites and what they're doing, the entertainment, sports, all of it. It's all of them and it's all of it. It's like that comedian said, it's a big club and you ain't in it, right? But trying to figure these things all out, because it's all Babylon. It's the merging of church and state, and it's coming on very quickly again. But we're supposed to flee. We're told to flee Babylon, and my channel's called Fleeing Babylon. But we're to flee Babylon. But in order to flee it, we got to figure out what it is. We got to seek so we can see. And once we see it, it's much easier to see what we need to flee from. But so if we don't look for the truth, we cannot find it. And that's what Yeshua said, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. He wants us to come to him directly, not to our priests, kings, bishops, pastors. No, he wants us to come to him. He's given us the scriptures. He's given us prayer. We can go, we can figure things out ourselves. But only those that seek can find. That's so true. You cannot put oil in the lamps of others. I can share these videos, and I enjoy sharing them, but I can't do the searching, and people have to do, all have to do our own study and our own thinking and put two and two together the best we can. So Moses he pled with his people to come to God and prepare themselves, and they preferred to have him go and talk to God and just tell him what to do. But that isn't really what he wanted. And all the prophets have done the same. The true prophets warn the people to be ready in all things. They teach them all the 10 commandments. They teach them all the laws of God, all the commandments. They truly help the people to try to come to truth, to prepare for the wedding feast. So think about it. Why did only 8 people or 8 souls survive the flood? Well, what were the people doing before the flood? They were eating, drinking, giving in marriage, and the waters came. And Isaiah says that in our day it'll be the same way. There'll be so few people left that a child can count them. That's in Isaiah. Because we won't be ready. We won't be prepared. There'll be one in a city, one in a household, 2 in a city, doesn't really matter. I don't know. I'm just what I've read in the scriptures. But it's not a lot that will be seeking the truth enough to find it and prepare themselves so that they can be there at the wedding feast. For all free thinkers, agnostics, and unaligned followers of the way, keep on finding all the truth you can without hardening your heart. Like I said, I went from an agnostic to following the way to seeking truth, and I'm not all the way there by any means, but I love the things I learn, and I try to share a few things that I can. But it's all out there. I could probably make 1,000 videos and not cover all the stuff that should be covered. So there's so much to learn, and I hope that you will have joy in learning and seeking and finding. And not just only in the end, as you keep going and keep going, I hope one day you'll find that you can actually go to God yourself, just like it says in the first commandment, and go directly and get answers to things that you want to understand. Please don't, in my opinion, please stay away from the doctrine of the Pharisees, or the leaven of the Pharisees, or the leaven of the churches, or the doctrines of the churches. Be very careful. Yes, they may have a Bible, but what are they teaching? Just be very careful of the teachings in any of the organized religions. And like I said here, may we come out of the false religions, because they're part of Babylon. And so all you free thinkers and those that are still here listening, will we keep the first commandment and go directly to God for truth? And, at least in my experience, he doesn't, it's not like he comes in and tells you in a voice in your head all the time, what, you should do and what you should think, and look here and look there. But you just get these feelings as you're going along and you're looking at truth. And you can put one thing together with another thing, and it starts to come together, and you can ask for more help, and things come. But will we be ready? Will we study? Will we seek? Will we find that pearl of great price? Will we be clean and touch not the evil thing? My personal feeling, I end with this, but my personal feeling is that if we are still following any religious system in this world, any of them, we will not be able to see the servant or come to the feast. because our heart, we won't have learned the truth. We will miss out. Not any more than the people at the days of Yeshua when he came. They missed out. They could not see. They were in what would be called the true church, as much as it was. They were in going to synagogue, doing all the things. They were keeping all the laws, keeping the Sabbath, doing all those things. And yet they missed out because they were out that group of, they could not see. They could not see when he came. Would we be able to? Would I be able to? Very few were able to recognize him and change. Just the poor, the outcasts, the free thinkers, the meek, and of course the fishermen, and the other people. But there were people from all walks of life that could. But I hope that when we look for truth with all our hearts, we will not be distracted by the cares of the world, like the Nicodemus group. So come out of her, my people. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like and a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. And thanks for your support. Take care.